toward financial wellness. Reach out to them for advice at 855-DON-GINO. And now back to your hosts, Don Getling and Gino Franti.
Things that hopefully most people we know don't have to deal with this.
Yeah, hopefully nobody does have to deal with it. But Matthew knows the reality is that people deal with it every single day. And so, Matthew, welcome to the show. And
thank you.
Tell us a little bit about yourself, just so everybody can get to know you for a moment. And then tell us a little bit about, this ugly thing called domestic violence that we pretend doesn't exist, I'm going to say.
Okay, thank you. Well, like you said, my name is Matthew Breddan. I'm an attorney and a shareholder at the Reape-Rickett Law Firm. I joined the firm about 3 years ago, and I run the Calabasas office. Our main office is over here in Valencia, not far from this studio, in fact. The entire firm, all we do is family law and family law-related matters. So anything that really touches the family unit outside of probate, that we give to people that specialize in that area of law. And, I've been doing this for about 20 years now. I also sit as a temporary judge in LA County and mediate throughout the county and volunteer and, give back a little bit to the community in that way. So.
Yep. So those are all important things, and you'll notice the trend, as Don and I always talk about, is that we have everybody that's on the show always gives back something to the community. It's kind of a requirement to be on the show. You mentioned our studio here, so take a look at our studio by going to donandgino.com. You hit the live streaming button, you'll see this production put together by AP Productions, and we have Lisa and Tina back there helping us out. And you can watch us streaming live every Saturday morning from 9 a.m. to 10 a.m. at donandgino.com. So tell us a little bit about domestic violence. It is a reality we have to deal with. Is it a high percentage of your family law cases, would you say?
It happens more often than people would like to think. Unfortunately, in more recent times, people are using them in ways that they weren't intended to be used. They've found out that, we talked about briefly during the break, that ever since the O.J. Simpson trial came out and everything that Nicole Brown Simpson had gone through prior to her unfortunate demise, that has changed the laws and the way that the courts look at the domestic violence issue. One of the issues back with Nicole Brown Simpson was that she had called the police several times because of the treatment she was getting from O.J. Simpson, and everybody just turned a blind eye. So now the temporary restraining orders seem to be given out much more readily. It doesn't always have to be physical abuse. There's been a lot of cases that came down recently that checking your spouse's emails can be considered domestic abuse under the harassment component of that. And again, there's a lot more detail involved in that. It's not just you look at your wife's emails and you're going to get a restraining order against you. But there was one case where this guy downloaded something like 1,500 pages of his wife's emails and private conversations and then also distributed them to other people. That was considered by the courts to be domestic violence. I had one case where the wife was holding the husband's keys and he grabbed them out of her hand, and in that process, she got a little bruise on her finger from the key ring, and that was considered to be a domestic violence issue. And she had him arrested, actually, for that because she had signs of physical abuse.
And what happens? They go to jail and...
Well, initially, in this particular case, he was booked, and he posted bail, was released. So we had concurrent cases going there. We had the family law case that I was involved in, and then he had a criminal defense attorney that was trying to deal with that issue in the criminal courts. And that's actually a good segue question, because when there's a criminal case pending, there are two types of domestic violence restraining orders. There's a criminal restraining order, and then there's also a civil restraining order, which is what the family courts issue. So in the family court, you can't really have your hearings on that because of the defendant's right against self-incrimination. So if there's a criminal case pending, a lot of times the family law case just gets put to the side until that gets resolved in one way or another, because if the defendant testifies in the family law case about anything having to do with that incident, he could be impacting against the criminal case.
It's funny. It's funny and it's not funny at the same time, because I think all of us have the legitimate concern when you talked about this key situation, right? I remember, it must have been like probably 8 years ago now, but one of my account representatives, who was a friend of mine, nice guy and everything, he says, disappeared, like totally fell off the map for a little over a week. And I was like, dude, what happened? Where you been? I've been calling you. I've been texting you. He's like, man, I'm embarrassed to tell you, but he's like, I've been in jail. I'm like, what happened? He's like, I threw a shoe at my wife.
Yeah.
And he's like, I was like, a shoe? I was like, shoe? Mine chased me around with a frying pan. What the hell am I supposed to do?
Well, we laugh about that, but the reality is that from the court's perspective, that's domestic violence. Any type of aggression, and as you can imagine, in a divorce proceeding or in a custody proceeding, that the tensions run high, and people's patience is at an all-time low. So what would have normally been more acceptable in the way of physical or even verbal conduct is now everybody's on heightened alert. So if you are overly aggressive with your spouse in a divorce proceeding and yell at her in front of the children, that can also be considered domestic violence depending on what you say. And if it's in front of the children, then obviously that can impact your custodial rights, at least in the short term, until the whole thing can be sorted through. For that type, you're probably not going to get arrested, but the police are called on almost every one of these situations, and a lot of times they'll just tell everybody to behave and go somewhere else. They'll ask one or the other if they've got someplace else they can go, and they just try to diffuse it that way.
In the extreme cases where there is physical abuse, how are these handled? How is the person doing the physical abuse? What happens with them?
In criminal court or family court?
You can tell me.
Okay. Well, like I said, there's two different tracks that they tend to go on. There's the criminal case, and then they have a regular criminal trial like any other criminal defendant, and the prosecutor, and if they can get a public defender or hire private counsel, and then it just goes on in that court just like any other criminal case. In the family law case, domestic violence is a very, very critical issue because it can impact so many other areas. It can impact let me backtrack for a second. Typically, if one person files for a restraining order against the other, let's pretend that they're granted the temporary orders. Those are in place for up to 21 days. Based solely on a declaration from the complaining party, you can be removed from your home for those 21 days. You can be kept away from your children. You can go back maybe once or twice if necessary with law enforcement to retrieve your personal effects. But that's to protect the individual for a short period of time until there can be an actual hearing. The other thing, which has been litigated up to the U.S. Supreme Court, is that when a temporary restraining order is issued against somebody, they have a very short period of time to turn in any firearms they may have. So it impacts on your Second Amendment rights to bear arms as well. Then there's a hearing, which is very much akin to the criminal trial, but it's in the family courts, where that is both sides have the rights to produce witnesses and other evidence, and if there's medical treatment and the complaining party has medical bills, they want to introduce those. It can just really expand from there.
So this Saturday morning, as you're listening to the Don Gino Real Estate and Finance Show, you're going, what does this have to do with real estate or finance? Well, when we get back, we're going to talk about how this can definitely impact a family's finances, for sure, because
Absolutely.
I'm listening to this going, number one, it's very complicated. Number two, it sounds like it could get pretty expensive in one way or another. And number three, you're probably sitting in your car threatening your spouse right at this moment in time. So when we get back, we'll have more time with Matthew Breddan of the Reape-Rickett Law Firm, Calabasas office, sharing words of wisdom with us here in Santa Clarita about how to keep our hands and voices to ourselves so we don't have a lot of problems. We'll be right back.